So we got a presentation from Mr. Mike Muscatell. Mike Muscatell is a seasoned IT veteran with more than 25 years in the information security field. He has been featured and published in several cybersecurity publications, including PenTest Magazine June 2020 edition. He was honored as top 100 professionals in the information security field by Strathmore's for 2014. He is a member of a number of security organizations, including InfraGard and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Cyber Committee. Without further ado, I turn the presentation over to Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Um, so I'd like to start off by saying that this presentation has probably been seen, the topic has been seen before. Those of you that attended any Secure World events may have seen it. I will tell you today, today's presentation may look the same, but it is not. So if any of you are kind of coming around for round two, you are going to get a new dose of information. So with that being said, a little bit about me. As he mentioned, I am featured in PenTest Magazine. I'm actually a regular contributor to PenTest. I have a new article coming out pretty soon on insider threats, the remote worker edition. I'm also going to be doing a presentation on that next year as well. I am part of InfraGard. For those of you not familiar with InfraGard, it's run by the FBI and overseen by DHS. It is a partner public-private relationship with the business in the Bureau, and it provides a lot of great information. What you see in the news, typically, if you get it from InfraGard, you get it miles ahead of what comes out publicly. That being said, InfraGard also has a program called Patriot Circle. I'm not going to talk too much about Patriot Circle, but I would encourage you, those of you to go in and check it out. It is definitely going to be worth the information flow, especially today with all the various types of threats that are out there and the information that's just flowing from all these different sources. It's kind of nice to have, think of it as getting it from the horse's mouth. And I rely heavily on this, and I corroborate it with folks in the community to just kind of see what else is out there. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the internet. So the internet is pretty much open, but also the deep web is pretty much open. And these are two layers of when you hear about the dark web, it's like, well, what is that made up of? Well, there's multiple layers, right? So the internet's going to have some components that they're advertising as dark web stuff, that stuff that you can see. Deep web is going to be similar to that, right? And all of this stuff is easily accessible. But here's the thing, the deep web is slowly transferring into the dark web. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to show today a lot of live demonstration. One of the things I'm going to show is that while it may seem like it's not restricted or indexed, it's definitely become more of a dark web resource from the deep web accessibility, but it's got all the hallmarks of the dark web. So that's a little bit of something that's different from the last time. So you know what? Why don't we just jump right into showing what all this really means. So the first thing I want to do is I want to basically turn everybody's attention to ransomware. Ransomware is constantly in the news, as everybody knows, and you hear about all these companies that are having things happen to them. So this website is actually perfectly accessible. These are all the companies that have been targeted by Maze in this year. So they are basically publishing everybody who hasn't paid, right? So typically you hear about folks that did they pay the ransom? Did they not pay the ransom? Were they ever restored from backup? What happens if you don't pay the ransom? Well, Maze is actually making an example of you, okay? And so by contrast, what they're doing is they're actually publishing your data out here online. Okay, so if you click on those links and you open up ToR, you can go out here and you can see, and I love this, that they're clients. So Maze has clients, which is great. But anyhow, full dump. So these are 100% companies that have had all of their data basically dumped out onto the internet. So here's Jekyll Island, and they're familiar with the Carolinas area, knows Jekyll Island. And here's their data right here. So this is departmental information, and one of these departments that's in here is a finance department. Another one is the legal department. So you can actually click on these and download them, okay? but I can tell you that the speed limit is around 400K a second. So there was one company out here that had a 4 gig finance file. That's a lot of data, right? That's a tremendous amount of data. So that right there would take quite a while to actually download. But be aware that if you do download it, it's um, it's completely at your discretion. But I would also warn that look who's watching you. Do that, right? So probably wouldn't recommend it. But I just want to basically make everybody aware that they've taken it a step further. Some of you may have already heard about this, maybe even seen the website, but they weren't sure, how far they actually went. This is how far they've gone. If you don't pay the ransom, they stick it out here. Now I can tell you from personal experience, I know the owner of this company. He actually owns anything called Platinum, and they got 1% published out here, right? Well, because he is a friend of mine, I actually did click on this, and I can tell you the contents of this file is pretty much bogus. There's nothing in here of true value. It has some client quotes in here. It has some client list information, which is fine. It's just got their, folks that they're doing business with. Now, if you're a competitor, that's probably valuable to them. If you're, a client, you're probably not too happy about that because your address and everything is out here. But if you think about it, your address is already public. But my point is in terms of financial impact, in terms of proprietary information, anything that they're specifically doing at Platinum Pools that nobody else is doing, that is not in this file, right? But from a reputation standpoint, it is a big hit, right? So, but his customers don't know that this is out here, right? And so while we advise the owner of Platinum Pools what is contained in here, we left it to him to disclose to what he was going to disclose to his customers of whether or not there's any relevance or risk to them in what that data is. So in terms of what folks in the community like myself that are trying to give back and looking out for some of these folks, again, he's a friend of mine. He mentioned the ransom. Now he restored everything from backup. So he did not pay the ransom. He did everything that he's been advised to do. He's one of those folks that when somebody said, hey, you have a risk of losing your data or you have a risk of having it inaccessible because of the way that you're set up, he listened and he actually did his backups and was able to restore and get his business back up in a matter of hours rather than rolling the dice and paying Maze and wondering if he was actually going to get his data back. So I mentioned earlier the list of information that is out here and it's available for people to actually see. One of the things that's actually part of the deep web is this site here. It's a Russian site. You can search it. It is indexed. You can find it if you look up certain keywords. But where it starts crossing over into the dark a little bit is right here. If you don't have this invitation code, you're not getting on this site. So you could go here and what they call check-in. You could actually go in to try to fill in all this, put in some numbers, even see if you can actually enumerate what was already here. It's going to fail. So they have locked this down to where you're not getting in here. Now, everybody who's been on ToR and been to some of the market sites have seen that they've gone as far as to change some of their access, and I'll get into that here in a few minutes. But I find it interesting that that somebody who's in this type of activity is gone to these great lengths. But there is a caveat. These guys have kind of left themselves open a little bit because they communicate through Telegram. Telegram, for those of you that don't know, is a online secure chat solution. And while everything is in Russian, I do have a way of dumping this and reading it. But the point is that if you're looking for a particular type of exploit that may be in the wild, some type of activity that may be currently going on, there's 697 people in this environment. Again, you have to be invited in here. I was able to get in very early on when I first got in here, there were only 7 people part of this Telegram channel. So I guess I'm kind of, just hanging out. The guy who runs the show here hasn't really, he's answered a few questions for me, but he hasn't really, you know, asked if I'm part of the website, because I'm not. I'm actually not part of the website. But if you are part of the website, you just can't go in here and start, downloading things. You have to contribute. So if you don't contribute, if you don't post so many comments or upload so many files, you're not allowed to actually take part in a lot of these resources that are actually out here. You can see them, but you can't touch them. So until you reach a certain credit level or gain a certain amount of credits within the site, even if you are accepted, you still have to prove your worth to the environment before you can actually really take part. So as you can see, I'm not logged in, I'm not part of this, but this is a site that back in about, I would say 3 years ago, anybody could actually get to. You could register it. It was, you had to be approved by somebody on the admin staff, and it pretty much went pretty quick. Nowadays, not so much. You have to jump through hoops to actually get out here. So the other thing that I wanted to mention today is with regards to what else is available. These are referred to as deep web links versus dark web links. So deep web links and dark web links sometimes are some in the same, but these are publicly accessible through ToR, and they're all categorized. This is just one of many sources that are out there. This is probably the best one to list them all. But I will tell you that as you're going through some of these marketplace financials, commercial services, the drugs, some of these are pretty sketchy. And I usually warn people that if you do go out here and start perusing any of these, do try to stay away from the drugs and financial ones. But there are several services out here that may appear to be perfectly legit, but they are in fact not legit. One of the other sources that everybody hears about is this guy. This was one of the biggest markets that's out here. These guys have been under attack for quite a while. I'd say within the last 5-6 weeks, they have literally been up, down, backwards, and forwards. As you can see, there's multiple sources here, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is what does that do to the data that they actually have? What kind of value is in that data that they actually have? Well, from an attack standpoint, it's not good because it's not available. You can't get it. But you also have to wonder: are they keeping stuff up to date? Is everything they have out there erroneous? Can I actually use it? Well, let's pivot back a little bit and talk about the companies that sell services that specialize in being able to access this information and tell you what it is that you actually can and cannot get to, right? So for the longest time, a lot of these services have been, this goes back 3 years. I'm going to show you guys some here. So this is dark web search, what do they call it? The dark web search engine components. And what these guys have done is they've built a discovery analytics engine. This was 2 years ago. There's some that go back even further than that. This one's 3 years ago. This one's 3 years ago. There's another one I had that was like 4 years ago. But what they're doing is they're building these custom images and engines that actually go out and pull data from these sites. But you got to ask yourself this question: what are they actually truly getting into these sites, or are they actually being blocked? Well, they're getting into a point. I work for Krispy Kreme donuts, and I can tell you that according to this, there's a bunch of information out here with Krispy Kreme free donuts. Well, I've checked it out. It's actually not real. However, if I want to get this information on this site particular, you may get a result saying, hey, we're seeing your information on Knulled. And it's saying that there's Krispy Kreme donuts for sale out there. Okay, well that's not good. That means that they've gotten some way to give out free donuts, maybe some coupons, whatever. But here's the deal. In order to get this information, number one, you have to be registered to get in here. And with Knulled, you actually have to pay for the access. That payment has to come in the form of cryptocurrency. Now you can go out and buy cryptocurrency. They give you the method of doing that, but they require, you wait for it, a debit card, not a credit card, a debit card. So they won't even let you use a gift card to go out here and buy cryptocurrency. So if you're smart enough to realize that it probably won't be a good idea for me to use my debit card out on a service like this, then you're not going to do that. But the question is, are the companies that are selling their services that offer up this information, are they going that far, right? Are they actually going out to pay for this, or are they just saying, hey, you're listed? Okay, yeah, great, I'm listed, but what else is there, right? I talked earlier about access. I showed how the access has changed um, on that dark website that's become a deep website that's become a dark website, right? And the issue is that with regards to ToR and the marketplace here, in order to actually get into Empire Market, you need a login and password, you need to do CAPTCHA, and you need a 6-digit code, which changes every time. So if you're building an engine to actually go that means that these folks have to generate that every single time. So why did they go to these links to do this? Because the bad guys have figured out that the good guys are using them to make money, and they're not too happy about that, right? So they're making it more difficult to actually get this information. Now, why am I telling you all this, right? Why, it's like, I'm not going to log in here. What does this really mean? It goes back to the value of the information, right? And while you may see something listed out there, the question is, how relevant is it? How damaging is it? And what can I do with it once I actually see it? Is there any way I can have it removed? No. You got a better chance of getting stuff off your credit report before you get stuff removed from a dark market, right? So think of this in terms of distribution, right? The supply chain of stolen data. Where does it start? Where it starts is out here and on an IRC network. Now, this just happens to be the Anon network. And while they don't do too much of this out here, they do a lot of it on this network. So this is CheckNet. This basically is when your credit card is stolen, this is one of the first networks that's gone to. And a couple of things that they actually do out here is they have a series of bots that actually check. Now this one's off, but you can actually go out here. Here's the checker. This checker is actually on. And you would go in here, and if we wait a few minutes, I'll let this run for a bit. We may see a number of folks actually trying to query an account number to see if it's valid. So you probably think or heard about folks that say, hey, I got this $75 or 75-cent charge or $1.45 charge. It's right here. See right here? This person is checking this number. They got the number, the expiration, and the CVV number, right? So all of this is up there. They'll get a private message sent back to them to let them know whether or not this is valid. The next thing that they could do is actually send a small amount to that number to see if it actually clears. So when your stuff is stolen, the very first thing is done is it's checked out, and it's checked out on networks like this. And so now, if these are valid, this person may turn around and go back and sell it to a marketplace, and they may have more than one card or whatever. But the idea is that by the time it gets to market, how many times has it been distributed? How many times has it been shared? And how pure is that data by the time it actually makes it to market, right? Here he goes right here. He just sent a request to another credit card for $19, and it was approved. Here's another one. Same card number? Yeah, same card number. So, so this is basically where it starts, is on the dark net. So this is the dark net side. So we heard you talk about dark web or deep web, dark web. This is dark net. So out here, this one in particular is designed specifically to look at credit card information. It can also, I think there's another channel in here if we look, where they actually sell Social Security numbers and various other types of personal identifiable information. Here you go. Records, Social Security number, date of birth by year. Records up to 1999 you're born. Also sell random records. So basically you would contact this person. Now, when you contact this person, are you going to just start talking to somebody over here? No. You're probably going to end up talking through a bot. Or you'll be invited to a private channel, which is not going to be listed in that list I had up earlier. They would not show up in there. And or you would be sent to another private server on the dark net. During the private channel, during that private conversation, they're basically going to send you a series of questions to figure out how serious you are about it, whether you're legit or not, and make a determination of whether or not it's safe to do business with you. One of the other things they ask is, where else have you done business? So it literally will come down to who do you know. If you know some of the same people, then it'll move a little bit faster for you. If you're new to the game and you come in here, they're going to suspect that you're law enforcement. Everybody's suspected to be law enforcement until you're legitimized.
Hey, Mike, we got a question.
Yeah.
Jesse Eversole asks, is that going on in real time?
Yeah, this is right now. And I did mention earlier, thank you for that. I did mention earlier, if you do have questions, please stop me, ask the question. Again, there's a lot of data through here. And again, I'm not going to be talking about the technical mechanics. Let's just focus on the output, focused on what we're actually seeing. But yeah, to answer your question, this is a live feed. So inside the Anon network, primarily what you're going to see out here is information related to exploits. And so if there is a particular type of exploit that I may have picked up inside a conversation going on out here, I may go back here to see if there's any reference to it. There is a bot out here that I can query for certain types of exploits and make a determination if there's any live activity with it, whether it's something that's in the wild or something to that effect. So see if we can find some other information. Now, one other point I want to make, I don't know if I showed everybody this, I'm encrypted. This session is fully encrypted. And everything that I'm doing, if you actually go out to any of these networks and you're not encrypted, now the session that I'm actually connected in is an encrypted session into here, but they do a lookup to see if I'm listed here as a guest, but they actually do a lookup to see if you're coming in via a recognized location, right? So if they can geolocate where you are and there's too much information being revealed about your location, they will kick you out.
Hey, Mike, we have another question.
Yep.
Anonymous attendee asks, how do you know what you're allowed to do in the dark web without getting in trouble / going to jail?
The old moral compass. That's a great question, actually. So I guess the best way to describe that is that Russian site that I showed earlier, right? So think of it as look but don't touch, touch but don't taste, right? So there is nothing wrong with me being in here. I can tell you I've never posted in here. I don't know Russian, probably would never, even if I did Google Translator, these guys can pick up on that crap. but I am simply observing, right? I am using this as a resource for myself to determine, what is active. We always hear about active threats. This is a great resource for me to go and reference, especially if it's been said to come from Russia or the Ukraine, of whether or not it's a true threat. Now, whether I take that particular exploit that they have provided and act on it, that is where that line is drawn. Think of it also as when we're doing pen testing. If you're pen testing for somebody, typically you get to a point where you say, okay, I have found something that appears to be exploitable. With your permission, we can actually go further. But look of it as like gray hat acting versus white versus black. So the white hat's going to make the discovery that something is exploitable. Gray is basically going to say, hey, tell me more about yourself. And if it comes back and gives some information, just like a name, rank, and serial number, we'll say a database. So you see SQL injection, you say, hey, database, tell me about yourself. And the database actually answers, which it shouldn't, right? So that means, okay, I haven't really gone in and taken any data out of the database. I haven't injected anything into the database, but the probability of that being able to be done is there. So that's where that line is, right? The other analogy I like to use is you walk up to a home and you see that the window is open, right? And not all the way open, but open enough. So you basically see, can you lift the window all the way open? You can. And now you went from being able to look into the window and see inside the home to being able to open the window and even look further in to see how much more you can see. But you didn't climb through the window, right? And you didn't take anything out, right? So as long as you keep a level of observation and your interaction limited as well, then I think that you'll be fine with not crossing that line. But always, always, always be encrypted if you do decide to take part. And everybody's like, well, I'm using ToR, that's encrypted, right? Not exactly, but there is a way to actually do that. And that leads me into the next thing. I appreciate the question. This here is a list of what's called exit nodes. The question I always get a lot of times, especially working with the Bureau for so many years, is that you guys know how to track these guys down, or you know who they are. Why can't you find them? Why can't you figure out who is part of Maze? This is a list of what's referred to as exit nodes. These all expire in a very short amount of time. They're randomized. They're all very encrypted, and a lot of these email addresses and names are completely fake, right, that are associated with this. There's a website out there where you actually can go out and generate an entire ID for yourself from name all the way to birth date, social security number, credit cards, you name it. It generates the entire bio of an individual, and then you can use that to sign up for a lot of these different services. And so these exit nodes, because they're so randomized, it makes it very difficult to track one individual to another, even though there's some information out here that would appear to be completely valid. When you actually go and look it up, does duck sounds at AOL.31.com exist? It could be, but it could also be a compromised account, right? So do we give up? Do we basically say, we're not going to try to, go after any of these folks? No, there are other methods. I'm not going to get into that. But I can tell you that on the surface, it's not as simple as it would appear.
Hey, Mike, we got another question.
Yep.
Anonymous attendee asks, do you use a separate personal endpoint to access these sites or your own primary personal computer?
Yeah, so right now the machine I'm on is my machine. I do have an encrypted session, but I also have ToR set up to act as an additional proxy. So for instance, when I connect to the IRC network, even though I'm connected here, I'm actually using the ToR browser as a proxy to actually go through the network and connect. So as a result, there's multiple layers of encryption that uh, that is here. So right now, the IP address that I'm coming from um, is listed here, but it's completely fake. It's not the one that I'm actually connected to right now. So the other thing is, do I ever, if I clicked on something, would I encrypt? Would I endanger myself from encrypting? I actually have a series of checks built into browsers, and I have various sandboxes that are set up where it prompts me and says, "Hey, this is trying to execute," and I'll send it to the sandbox. Very complex setup. The average person wouldn't have this. I warn Mac users especially because people think, "Hey, I'm on a Mac. I'm safe." Not entirely, because if it's a root execution for the Mac and you're on there, you're perfectly allowed to be there. It can actually execute a cron job and run in the background. You'd never know it. You'd never see it. It wouldn't slow down the machine, and it would literally execute without notice. That's being done through a new little tool that the Russians invented through browser tab execution, and it's done through just about every browser that's out there.
Hey, Mike, we got another question.
Yep.
Anonymous attendee asks, can these people go after you if they suspect you are law enforcement? Have you heard of a case where they did?
Oh, I've seen a case where they did. Basically, the person was engaged with them. They followed all the right protocols. They encrypted themselves, so on and so forth. The way they got caught was they connected with a different computer and forgot to set up. They figured, we have this trust now, right? And so they connected with a different computer and figured, well, we've been doing air finger quotes business, right, for a period of time. We should be good. No sooner that connection was made, they saw that they were coming from a different location. They saw that they were coming from the U.S. And from that point, um, they actually didn't attack them straight away. They continued to talk to them while they actually went after the machine that they were connected on, and then were able to pull everything about them and just completely started posting a whole bunch of uh, fake information about that person. And that person wasn't law enforcement, so they got burned. I think they were almost 6 months into this particular relationship with this person, and just some late night, 3 o'clock in the morning, going to get up and talk to them. Oh, I'm just going to use this Chromebook and everything should be fine. And it went all sideways from there. So always pay attention. All right, so I found the one that I was referring to earlier. This is one that started the project, this the Get Onion project. So this was about 4 years ago. So this is where the Onion scan actually started, where they are actually going out and scanning for at first hidden services within the ToR network, and then it kind of went from there to where it's like, oh, we could build these what they were calling agents to run and log into these sites. But like I mentioned earlier, it's gotten a lot more difficult for companies to do that. And so I think that folks are starting to learn that it's not as easy as it used to be. And I actually demonstrated for a company that specializes in this sort of thing the other day, and they have literally gone back and they're retooling their whole approach to this because it's like you don't want to turn into that rule that of the 20 events I find, only 2 of them are actually valid, right? So how are you going to charge somebody $12,000 for data that is only 1% accurate? Right, so here's another transaction that was done. This one was actually declined for $2.46. So you have winners and losers out here. Right. It looks like Empire is still down. So, um, and I can tell you that a lot of the services that are out there dependent heavily on their participation and availability. And as you can tell, it's not there. All I'm saying is I'm not here to poo-poo on those services. I'm basically saying that when somebody presents you with that, like our CIO came to me and said, "Hey, such and such from my old company called and said that they found a whole bunch about stuff about us, and we should look at it." It's like, okay, well, what? See if you can get any details. Oh, it's just that it's saying that it's out there. Okay, well, if there's any details, then we can actually do that. So, so the next question was, okay, well, what do we do with that information? Well, if you have a mobile app like we do, better secure the mobile app. Make it difficult for that service to actually operate from the dark, right? So, because what they're doing is they're using your mobile app technology to interface with either stolen accounts or whatever. The other thing I've seen where there'll be looks like thousands of accounts are trying to be logged into a reward service or something like this, and for something that you offer, and you're like, are they stealing the accounts? No, what they're doing is they're testing stolen passwords. Now they're not necessarily stealing from your system; they may have gotten them from somewhere else. But the average person that signs up for a rewards or loyalty program, that password that they use is used on 4 other services on average. They could be other your loyalty services. They could be other social media services. So the best thing that you can do is protect that person's password, because at the end of the day, they may not be after your data. They're just using you as a resource. And so if you have the ability to limit that, and to make it to where that access can't be gotten from the dark, and you better secure that mobile app, then that's the best way to crush that service that's out there that's being offered to folks. Now, why people would buy donuts with cryptocurrency is beyond me, but whatever. All right. So with that, I want to jump into my final cyber thought. Went over a lot of information. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit. So I started out by showing the various types of exposure that ransomware groups like Maze have gone to basically punish companies for not taking part or cooperating with them, and they're posting their data publicly. I would advise you that if you believe that you've been part of that, or somebody's company that would, if anything, I would go to ransomware.fund and do a search and see if your company is on there. Typically, the response groups that come in, they don't go that far. They depend heavily on what is already in the house and what types of actions are taken, and really just more of a recovery standpoint. But the idea is that if you can go out there and you can see that you're listed, go out there and grab that data and see if what your exposure is, right? What are they actually getting? As I mentioned, Platinum Pools earlier, they did have some data out there, but it was basically nothing proprietary, nothing financial, just their customer list. Now, from a reputation standpoint, that may still be a big deal. So I would definitely take part of that. Are there any other groups that are doing this? No, Crabs was going to do it, but they didn't. Maze is one of the first groups that's actually starting to do this, but it doesn't mean that there won't be copycats later. Now, people say that there's another group that spun up. A lot of times, and some of the other experts will tell you this, that you'll notice that there's there's a lot of similarities in one group to the other. So you got to wonder, okay, do they just rename themselves and are at it again? Some cases that may be the case. The other thing I showed was a lot of the various sources through ToR, the marketplaces and such that are out there, that full list of things that I was mentioning. And like I said, for the ones that are drug related, you got to keep in mind, some of those folks are selling just about everything. And I, whether it's your relatives, your kids, your siblings, whoever, friends, if you know if somebody even mentions that they've went out to one of those sites, I would just try to talk them out of it. It's not a good place to be. Some of those other ones where they say that they'll give you a gift card, $50 gift card for $25. Basically, all they're doing is harvesting your account information because they are forcing you to use your debit card, as I mentioned earlier, to transact versus a credit card. A lot of the things that I do, I'll have various gift cards available that I'll use, so I don't have to use any personal information. But some of those services have caught on to that, and they're not allowing even those types of services to enact anymore. The other point that I made was the services that are offering saying, hey, we're able to find out whether you're on the dark net or not. I did a exercise with one person. There's a service out there called Ben Verified. I created an email address and a password that I knew would get compromised. And by the time it got back to me that that email address had been compromised, when I got the password, it was a different password. And so it was actually a password from another account that I had set up. So, think of it as that old game where you whisper in one ear, goes around, and it's different by the time it actually gets back to you. That happens a lot out here. And that's why I went to the dark net to show you, where does it start? It starts there. People are going to verify information. They're going to see if there's any true value in it, and then they're going to distribute it from there. By the time it makes it to some of these markets, how pure is that data and how reliable is it? The other thing that I showed was the reliability of those services, how one minute they're there and the next minute they're not, because there are no friends among thieves when it actually comes to a lot of these services out here. The Russian site that I showed earlier had a separate arm just for transacting all of the things that they were selling, and that actually got attacked so bad that they actually just had to shut it down. So I don't even know, how they're actually earning any money off of the things that they're stealing and advertising. I wasn't able to show that today because, again, that service has been shut down. The last thing I showed was IRC. Now, for those of you familiar with IRC, it's been around a really long time. Back in the day, that was the way to communicate. That was how people would basically keep in touch online. Later, you had ICQ come about. You had Yahoo Messenger come out. AOL had a service when it also came out. But IRC still lived on and was still relied upon and wasn't really looked at as an unsafe place. But today there's so many different ways of communicating, all types of different services that are out there that are perfectly safe. So what I say to folks that see people using IRC, especially their kids, I get this a lot. So, my kid is on IRC or was talking about this IRC program or, thing, what is that? And I said, well, it's not the what or the why that they're on there. What you want to ask is how. How did they get out there, right? How were they drawn into that? Now, it could be, a gaming, thing because Unreal, anybody familiar with the Unreal game, that was a big deal, Unreal IRCD, but it's been under attack for even today. Several exploits out there for that. But here's the thing, you got Twitch, you got all these other gaming platforms that are taking on these other services. So again, how did they get out there? So if they're on IRC, there's a pretty good chance it's not for good reason. So I would definitely be aware of that. And that's my final cyber thought. So as I always say, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Always want to stop and think before you connect, especially in that space. I am not discounting folks from going out there and touring around yourself. Just make sure that you have a encryption service that you're using to do so. And before you share. So if you are going to do anything out there, definitely don't talk about it. It's the old Fight Club saying, don't talk about Fight Club. If you have a reference that you use for, like I have with the Telegram thing with the Russian site, I don't really, I'm advertising it here, but if I come across something, I'm really not asked about my sources. People trust what I do, but also make sure that what I am looking at is legitimate, and if it's something that is going to impact my company, right? So you'll hear about threats all the time, and you look at, how you're better preparing yourself. But one of the things is if you have the ability to do those searches, um, and you have that resource, then you can do that. If you hear of others that are referencing these types of services and these types of sources, this should give you an indication of what maybe in those past conversations you have, what that kind of looks like, and maybe put some positive on that to say, okay, well, maybe they are able to get some information that's not readily available to some others. So that'll open it up to other questions. Anyone?
Come on, I know you guys got some questions.
Is ransomware fund safe? I would only go to it if you're encrypted. Got to remember who's running that site, Maze. So definitely, definitely want to be encrypted before you do any of this stuff. All right, and the question here. Yes, I'm sorry. That's a very good question. So the question is when you say encrypt, are you referring to a VPN? Yes, so VPN. So I typically tell people if it's advertised, don't buy it. But the problem is there's not a lot of services out there. But if I had to refer folks to one other than Nord and ExpressVPN, I would refer you to Comodo, COMODO. Okay, so a good way to use ToR from home. ToR in and of itself is has a level of encryption. The problem is ToR was compromised back in 2015, and it really hasn't recovered very much from that. Those of us who still use it always have a encrypted VPN connection before we actually even use ToR. So and even another, so we're basically adding another layer of protection. So even if you're going to use ToR, I wouldn't say it's a false sense of security. I would just say it's an untrusted sense of security today. So the free, the problem with the free VPN services is nothing's for free, right? So you think of all the apps that they say, hey, download this app for free. Well, that app is farming. That's all I'm going to tell you. It's farming, and it's farming a whole bunch of stuff. So those of you who have seen that, it'll pop up and say, can I have access to your contacts? Can I have access to your phone? And you think, oh, it's telling me now. I'm just going to tell it no. It's still not free. So those services that you got to wonder if they are in fact free services. There's even an onion one out there called Orbit, and Orbit is written by a guy out of Hong Kong that has since been arrested. So you recommended Nord, ExpressVPN, or Comodo. So Comodo is what I actually recommend. Nord and Express advertise on almost as much as Flow for Progressive. I mean, they're everywhere. So I don't trust an organization that advertises that much. The service I use personally has never advertised, and they're based out of the UK. All right. Look at what else we got here. Oh, I'm sorry. Komodo VPN. So the question was, how does VPN enhance ToR encryption? Anything that is traced back to through that service back to your, you got to remember it's still running on your machine, so it's going to be looking at the local access of your machine. So it's still going to be able to see information through the browser. So if you encrypt that, then the connection that you initially made to ToR, then out to the dark web, that is all, it's end-to-end encryption at that point. How do you get started trying to access the deep and dark web? I'm actually not going to answer that. Sorry. All right. So the last thing I'll say about burner uh, burner phones services. Burner phone services do not protect your core phone because the app still has core access to your phone. So as soon as you install an app on your phone, you're giving it the access it needs to see everything. So just because you're using a burner number through a burner app, that doesn't mean that it's not revealing other information about you or your phone. So I do advise people to be careful thinking that, hey, I'm downloading this burner app or I'm downloading this service that side loads a phone number for me. Then it's not going to see anything but this phone number. But you got to remember the app has complete access to everything on your phone, especially if you're using it to mask your phone service. It has to have access to your phone, contacts, and everything else to do that. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I appreciate everyone joining.